Commander Zethkalar had witnessed the rise and fall of 17 galactic civilizations. His crystalline exoskeleton bore the scars of 1,000 battles, each mark telling stories of conquest across star systems that lesser beings could barely imagine. The hegemony had appointed him as Supreme Battle Coordinator precisely because no living entity possessed his tactical experience. War, in all its forms, had become as familiar to him as breathing was to organic species. The briefing chamber aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominance hummed with the soft blue glow of tactical displays. Admiral Vexithara, her 6 arms gracefully manipulating holographic battle maps, turned her compound eyes toward Zethkalar. "Commander, we have a situation developing in the Sol system. A species calling themselves humans has been detected." Zethkalar's mandibles clicked dismissively. Another primitive species attempting to defend their homeworld, no doubt. What classification have our xenobiologists assigned them? "That's where it becomes interesting," Vexithara replied, her antennae twitching with uncertainty. "Initial scans indicate they've barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology is crude by galactic standards. Yet," she paused, manipulating the display to show tactical readouts. "Our forward scouts have encountered unexpected resistance." The hologram shifted to display Earth, a blue-green sphere orbiting a yellow star. Zethkalar had seen thousands of such worlds. The pattern was always the same. Primitive species would panic upon first contact with superior technology, either surrendering immediately or mounting feudal resistance that lasted mere solar cycles. The hegemony's expansion had consumed entire spiral arms using this predictable formula. "Show me their military capabilities," Zethkalar commanded, his 4 eyes focusing intently on the display. The tactical readout materialized before him. Kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion, primitive nuclear technology. Zethkalar's assessment was immediate and confident. Their military structure appears conventional. Ground-based armies, atmospheric aircraft, orbital platforms. We've encountered similar configurations 937 times. Standard subjugation protocol, 7 should suffice. Vexithara's hesitation was palpable. "Commander, perhaps you should review the engagement reports from our advanced reconnaissance fleet." The first report filled the holographic space. Scout Captain Mordesh's voice echoed through the chamber, tinged with confusion that set Zethkalar's sensory organs on edge. "Supreme Command, reporting from the outer edges of the Sol system, we've encountered irregular defensive patterns. The humans have somehow detected our cloaked reconnaissance drones despite our technology being several thousand cycles more advanced than theirs." Zethkalar's crystalline features remained impassive. Detection of cloaked vessels occasionally happened when primitive species developed rudimentary quantum sensors. "Continue," he ordered. "The humans' response to our presence defies standard behavioral models," Mordesh continued. Rather than panicking or attempting to negotiate, they immediately began adapting their defensive networks. Their communication frequencies shifted to quantum-encrypted channels we hadn't expected them to possess. More concerning, they've begun repositioning their military assets in patterns that suggest they understand our typical assault methodologies. Now Zethkalar's attention sharpened. In his extensive experience, primitive species required dozens of engagements before recognizing hegemony tactical patterns. The humans had apparently achieved this understanding from mere reconnaissance contact. The next report came from Battle Group Epsilon, commanded by the experienced Captain Yulthanis. "Supreme Command, we proceeded with standard harassment protocol to test human defensive responses. Our expectations were..." The recording crackled with static. "The humans' countermeasures exceeded all projection models. They've somehow weaponized their civilian infrastructure. Their commercial shipping lanes have been converted into mobile defense platforms. We detected what appeared to be freight vessels, but when we moved to intercept them..." The audio cut to emergency transmissions. Zethkalar recognized the sounds of ships under attack, but the weapon signatures made no sense. Human technology shouldn't have been capable of penetrating hegemony shields. "Captain Yulthanis, please clarify your report," came Admiral Vexithera's voice from the recording. "The civilian vessels opened fire with weapons that shouldn't exist in their technology base. They've somehow modified their cargo containers to house plasma cannons, reverse-engineered from we're not sure what. The engineering required to accomplish this integration should be beyond their capabilities. Worse, their targeting systems demonstrated predictive algorithms that anticipated our evasive maneuvers." Zethkalar's 4 eyes narrowed to pinpoints. Reverse engineering advanced technology required understanding fundamental principles that took most species millennia to develop. These humans had apparently accomplished this feat in the brief period between first contact and active engagement. The final report came from Fleet Commander Cormathus, a veteran whose tactical acumen Zethkalar had personally respected for 2 centuries. "Supreme Command, I regret to inform you that Standard Subjugation Protocol 7 has failed catastrophically." Failed? Zethkalar had never heard those words applied to Protocol 7. The standard approach had worked on every species the hegemony had encountered. Superior technology overwhelmed primitive defenses, while psychological warfare demoralized resistance. The formula was mathematically precise. "The humans' response to our intimidation tactics has been—" Cormathus paused, searching for adequate words. "They've interpreted our overwhelming technological superiority as a challenge rather than a deterrent. Their military communications, which we've successfully intercepted and translated, contain phrases like asymmetric warfare opportunities and technological force multiplication. They appear to view our advantages as puzzles to be solved rather than insurmountable obstacles." Zethkalar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep contemplation. Throughout his extensive military career, he had observed consistent patterns in primitive species. When faced with vastly superior technology, they either surrendered in recognition of futility or fought desperately with their existing capabilities. They did not typically begin immediate adaptation and innovation. "Furthermore," Cormathus continued, "the humans have demonstrated something unprecedented. They've begun sharing defensive innovations across their entire species through their global communication networks. Technologies developed in one geographical region appear in military applications on the opposite side of their planet within solar hours. This distributed innovation system allows them to iterate and improve their defensive capabilities at rates our tactical models cannot accommodate." The recording shifted to tactical display footage. Zethkalar watched human military units employing weapons and strategies that hadn't existed in their arsenal mere cycles earlier. They had somehow transformed mining equipment into anti-orbital cannons. Their civilian engineers were designing shield generators based on theoretical principles they shouldn't have understood. Most disturbing of all, the humans were sharing these innovations freely. Species typically hoarded military advantages for political leverage. The humans' collaborative approach to defensive innovation was creating exponential improvement curves that defied Zethkalar's extensive tactical experience. Admiral Vexithara manipulated the display to show current human defensive positions. "Commander, based on these reports, how do you assess the situation?" Zethkalar studied the tactical readouts with growing unease. The humans had transformed their entire star system into a defensive network in the brief period since first contact. Their orbital platforms now incorporated technology that shouldn't exist. Their communication systems used encryption methods that suggested understanding of quantum mechanics far beyond their apparent technological level. "Their pattern recognition capabilities are exceptional," he admitted slowly. "They've identified our tactical preferences from minimal data and begun countermeasures accordingly. However, they remain a primitive species with limited resources. Superior firepower should eventually overwhelm their defenses." But even as he spoke, Zethkalar felt uncertainty creeping through his consciousness. The humans' response to contact with the hegemony differed fundamentally from every other species he had encountered. They weren't fighting desperately with existing technology. They weren't surrendering to superior force. Instead, they were evolving. "Admiral, what is our current assessment of human military potential?" he asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Vexithara's compound eyes reflected concern. "Our xenobiologists have made disturbing discoveries. The humans evolved on what they classify as a death world. Their planet experiences regular catastrophic events that would extinguish most species. Massive storms, geological upheavals, climate fluctuations, and predatory ecosystems. They've survived by developing exceptional adaptability." The implications began crystallizing in Zethkalar's tactical mind. A species that had survived planetary catastrophes would possess psychological resilience and innovation capabilities beyond normal parameters. They would view challenges as problems to be solved rather than threats to be feared. "Moreover," Vexthara continued, "preliminary analysis of their historical records reveals continuous warfare among their own species for thousands of cycles. They've developed and refined military tactics through constant conflict. Their strategic thinking incorporates lessons from countless battles fought with primitive technology against equally innovative opponents." Zethkalar felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of military service: genuine surprise. The humans hadn't just survived their hostile homeworld. They had thrived by turning adversity into advantage. They had practiced warfare against opponents who shared their innovative capabilities, creating an evolutionary arms race that produced exceptional tactical thinking. "Admiral," he said carefully, "I believe we may need to reconsider our approach to the Sol system." As if summoned by his words, the chamber's emergency communication system activated. The image of Scout Captain Mordesh appeared, his exoskeleton showing signs of battle damage. "Supreme Command, urgent update. The humans have just demonstrated something unprecedented. They've somehow acquired one of our damaged reconnaissance drones and—" Mordesh paused, his voice filled with disbelief. "They've reverse-engineered our shield technology. Not only that, they've improved it. Their modifications make our own shields appear primitive by comparison." The communication ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Zethkalar stared at the tactical displays, his 1,000 battles of experience suddenly feeling inadequate. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an opponent whose response to superior technology was to make it obsolete. Admiral Vexithara's voice was quiet. "Commander, what are your orders?" Zethkalar realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare was about to be tested by a species that treated impossible challenges as routine problems to be solved. The war room aboard the Eternal Dominance had transformed into something Zethkalar barely recognized. Where once orderly tactical displays had shown predictable battle progressions, now chaotic streams of data cascaded across every surface. Human defensive innovations were emerging faster than his analytical systems could process them. Each time his tactical computers calculated optimal countermeasures, the humans had already moved 3 steps ahead. "Commander," Admiral Vexithara's voice carried strain that 2 centuries of military service had never introduced. "The humans have done something impossible." Zethkalar turned from studying the latest reconnaissance reports. In the past 72 cycles, human military capability had exponentially increased beyond all reasonable projections. They had somehow converted asteroid mining operations into mobile weapons platforms. Their communication satellites were now armed with energy weapons derived from their own solar collection technology. Most disturbing, they had begun deploying defensive systems that incorporated principles from multiple alien technologies they shouldn't have had access to. "Define impossible, Admiral," Zethkalar commanded, though his crystalline exoskeleton was already shifting to its alert configuration. The holographic display materialized, showing the outer edge of the Sol system. Battlegroup Theta attempted Standard Intimidation Protocol 12. They positioned themselves at maximum visual range and began broadcasting surrender demands while displaying our technological superiority. The humans' response was... The recording began. Fleet Commander Sekthulos appeared in the communication matrix. His normally composed demeanor shattered. Supreme Command, the humans have somehow hijacked our intimidation broadcast and are using our own communication systems to coordinate their defensive networks. Not only that, they've traced our signal origins and begun targeting our positions with weapons that didn't exist in their arsenal this morning. Zethkalar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Hijacking hegemony communication systems required understanding encryption protocols that had taken the galaxy's most advanced civilizations centuries to develop. These humans had accomplished this feat in mere cycles. "Show me their weapon systems," he ordered. The tactical display shifted to reveal human orbital platforms that defied classification. They had somehow integrated mining lasers with medical equipment and civilian manufacturing systems to create directed energy weapons of unprecedented efficiency. Their targeting systems used algorithms that predicted hegemony evasive patterns with mathematical precision that suggested perfect understanding of his species' tactical doctrine. "How are they predicting our maneuvers?" Zethkalar asked, though he suspected the answer would challenge his fundamental understanding of warfare. "Our behavioral analysis teams have made a disturbing discovery," Vexithara replied. "The humans have been studying recordings of our previous conquests. They've analyzed thousands of hours of battle footage from our subjugation of other species. They've identified patterns in our tactical approaches that we didn't realize we were following." The implications sent shockwaves through Zethkalar's consciousness. Military doctrine was supposed to be adaptive and unpredictable. The revelation that his forces had been following detectable patterns for centuries meant that every battle, every victory, had been teaching potential enemies how to defeat the hegemony. "Furthermore," Vexithara continued, "they've been sharing this tactical analysis with resistance movements throughout the galaxy. Species that we subjugated decades ago are beginning to organize rebellions using human-developed countermeasures to our standard protocols." Zethkalar felt his worldview shifting beneath him like sand. The humans weren't just defending their own system. They were actively spreading tactical knowledge that threatened the hegemony's entire expansion strategy. In less than one standard galactic cycle, these primitive primates had identified fundamental weaknesses in military approaches that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. The emergency communication system activated again. Battle Coordinator Yex Nalis appeared in the holographic matrix, her normally pristine battle armor scarred and smoking. "Supreme Command, urgent tactical update. The humans have demonstrated combat capabilities that exceed our projections by several orders of magnitude." "Explain," Zethkalar commanded, though part of him no longer wanted to hear the answers. "We engaged a human fleet consisting primarily of converted civilian vessels. Our tactical assessments indicated easy victory against their improvised weapon systems. However, the humans had somehow networked their individual ships into a collective intelligence. Each vessel shared targeting data, defensive coordination, and tactical analysis in real time. When we destroyed individual ships, their accumulated tactical knowledge was instantly distributed to the remaining vessels." Zethkalar had never encountered anything like this. Military units typically became less effective as losses mounted, morale degraded, command structure collapsed, and surviving forces fought desperately rather than strategically. The humans had apparently created a system where combat losses actually improved their remaining forces' effectiveness. The engagement became progressively more difficult as their fleet size decreased. Yexanalis continued. By the time only 3 human vessels remained, they were employing tactics that countered strategies we hadn't even implemented yet. They were predicting our tactical decisions and positioning countermeasures before we had consciously made those decisions ourselves. This revelation struck Zethkalar like a physical blow. Anticipating enemy tactics required understanding their decision-making processes at a psychological level. The humans had somehow developed psychological profiles of hegemony command personnel accurate enough to predict military choices before those choices were made. "Admiral," Zethkalar said slowly, "how extensive is human intelligence gathering regarding our species?" Vexithara manipulated the tactical display, revealing intercepts of human communications. "Commander, they've been analyzing not just our tactical patterns, but our physiological and psychological characteristics. They've identified optimal frequencies for disrupting our sensory organs. They've developed psychological warfare techniques specifically calibrated to induce stress responses in our neural systems. They understand us better than we understand ourselves." The display showed human propaganda broadcasts specifically designed to demoralize hegemony forces. The psychological manipulation was sophisticated beyond anything Zethkalar had encountered. These humans had somehow developed expertise in alien psychology from minimal contact data. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Captain Mordesh appeared in a new communication, his crystalline exoskeleton dulled with what could only be described as exhaustion. "Supreme Command, the humans have demonstrated something that changes everything. They've somehow weaponized their own civilian population." "Clarify," Zethkalar ordered, though his tactical instincts were screaming warnings. "Every human civilian appears to be a potential military asset. Their children learn mathematics that translates directly into ballistic calculations. Their artists create works that double as camouflaged defensive positions. Their scientists publish research papers that contain encrypted military intelligence. Their entire society functions as a distributed military-industrial complex." Zethkalar had studied thousands of species across the galaxy. Military capabilities were typically concentrated in specialized warrior classes or dedicated military institutions. The humans had apparently evolved a society where every individual possessed potential military utility. "Moreover," Mordesh continued, "they've begun converting their entertainment industry into a weapon. They're creating fictional scenarios that explore hypothetical battles against technologically superior opponents. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're tactical training exercises that prepare their population for exactly the type of conflict we're conducting." The war room fell silent as the implications became clear. The hegemony was fighting an entire species that had been unconsciously preparing for asymmetric warfare against superior opponents for their entire cultural history. Every human story, every game, every cultural tradition had contributed to a collective understanding of how to fight impossible battles. "Admiral, what is the current status of our subjugation timeline?" Zethkalar asked, though he suspected the answer would shatter every projection. "Commander, we can no longer provide accurate projections. Human defensive capabilities are improving at exponential rates that exceed our modeling capacity. Conservative estimates suggest they'll achieve technological parity with our forces within 2 standard cycles. Aggressive estimates suggest they may already possess superior technology that they're concealing until tactically optimal moments." Zethkalar studied the tactical displays with growing comprehension. The humans weren't just adapting to hegemony technology, they were surpassing it. Their innovation rate suggested cognitive capabilities that challenged assumptions about primitive species. These weren't primitives stumbling through technological development. They were advanced intelligences who had simply followed different technological pathways. The emergency communication system activated once more. Fleet Admiral Dex Thanos, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's most elite battle formation, appeared in the holographic matrix. His presence meant the situation had escalated beyond routine subjugation. "Commander Zeth Kalar," Dex Thanos began, his voice carrying authority that had conquered star systems. "I'm assuming direct command of operations in the Sol system. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that threaten hegemony strategic doctrine throughout the galaxy." "Understood, Admiral," Zeth Kalar replied. "What are your orders?" "We're implementing total subjugation protocol. The humans' technological development rate poses an existential threat to hegemony expansion. We cannot allow their innovations to spread to other species. The Sol system must be contained and their civilization terminated before they achieve technological superiority." Total subjugation protocol hadn't been used in over 3 centuries. It represented the complete annihilation of target species using the hegemony's most devastating weaponry. Zeth Kalar had witnessed its implementation only twice, both against species that had developed planet-killing technology. "Admiral, do we have confirmation that humans possess planet-killing capabilities?" he asked. "No, Commander. We're implementing total subjugation because they possess something more dangerous, the ability to make planet-killing capabilities obsolete. Their rate of tactical innovation suggests they'll develop countermeasures to our most powerful weapons before we can deploy them effectively." Zeth Kalar felt the weight of cosmic history settling on his consciousness. The hegemony was preparing to destroy an entire species not because they were dangerous, but because they were too innovative to control. The humans had transformed warfare itself into something unrecognizable. As he prepared for what might be the final battle of his career, Zeth Kalar realized that regardless of outcome, the humans had already achieved something unprecedented. They had forced the galaxy's most successful military organization to abandon every tactical principle that had built their empire. Win or lose, these remarkable primates had already rewritten the rules of galactic warfare. But deep in his tactical consciousness, a disturbing question emerged. What if the humans were prepared for total subjugation protocol too? The annihilation fleet stretched across space like a constellation of death. 257 hegemony dreadnoughts formed precise geometric patterns around weapons platforms that could crack planets like eggs. Fleet Admiral Dex Thanos had assembled enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. The total subjugation protocol had never failed to utterly eliminate target civilizations. Zeth Kalar stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominance, watching tactical displays that showed humanity's final hours approaching. The Sol system lay before them like a blue-green jewel awaiting destruction. Every strategic calculation confirmed inevitable victory. The humans, despite their remarkable innovations, possessed insufficient firepower to challenge an annihilation fleet. "Commander," Admiral Vexithera's voice carried grim satisfaction, "all battle groups report ready for synchronized bombardment. Human orbital defenses have been cataloged and targeted. Estimated completion of total subjugation, 4 standard hours." Zeth Kalar nodded, though something in his tactical consciousness felt unsettled. The humans had consistently exceeded every prediction. Their silence during the Annihilation Fleet's approach seemed inconsistent with their pattern of immediate adaptation and innovation. He had expected desperate defensive preparations. Instead, the Sol system appeared almost peaceful. "Admiral Dex Thanos to all battle groups," the fleet commander's voice echoed through the communication matrix. "Commence total subjugation protocol. Target all human population centers, military installations, and orbital infrastructure. Leave nothing capable of supporting technological civilization." The first wave of hegemony planet crackers ignited, sending columns of annihilation energy toward Earth. Zeth Kalar watched the displays with professional detachment, recording tactical data for future subjugation operations. The energy beams would impact in 67 standard seconds. Human civilization would cease to exist shortly thereafter, 50 seconds. The planet cracker beams continued their inexorable approach. Still, no human response. Zeth-Kalar found their silence increasingly disturbing. 30 seconds. According to sensors, every human on Earth should be detecting incoming annihilation energy. Their complete lack of panic or defensive action defied everything Zeth-Kalar understood about species preservation instincts. 10 seconds. The planet cracker beams entered Earth's orbital space. Zeth-Kalar's tactical displays showed successful targeting locks on major human population centers. Nothing could prevent total civilization collapse. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, impact. The tactical displays exploded with impossible readings. The planet cracker beams, weapons that had destroyed countless worlds, simply vanished upon contact with Earth's atmosphere. No explosions, no energy dissipation. The annihilation beams disappeared as if they had never existed. "Admiral!" Battle Coordinator Yex Nalis's voice cracked with disbelief. "Our primary weapons have been neutralized. Repeat, planet cracker bombardment has been completely neutralized. No damage detected to human infrastructure." Zeth-Kalar stared at the tactical displays, his 1,000 battles of experience utterly inadequate for interpreting the data before him. The humans had somehow developed defensive technology that made the hegemony's most devastating weapons irrelevant. "All battle groups, implement secondary bombardment protocols," Admiral Dexathanos commanded. "Deploy quantum destabilizer arrays. Nothing can withstand quantum-level destruction." The second wave of weapons fired. Quantum destabilizers, devices that could unravel matter at the subatomic level, streaked toward Earth. These weapons operated on fundamental universal principles. No known defensive technology could counter them. The destabilizers reached Earth's orbital space and promptly vanished exactly as the planet crackers had. "Impossible," Admiral Vexithara whispered. "Quantum destabilizers cannot be neutralized. They operate below the level of physical interaction." That was when the humans responded. Every ship in the Annihilation Fleet suddenly found its communication systems broadcasting human transmissions, not standard military communications, but something that made Zeth-Kalar's exoskeleton chill with incomprehension. Human music, specifically what their cultural databases identified as a symphony composed by an entity called Beethoven. "Admiral Dex Thanos to all battle groups." The fleet commander's voice now competed with orchestral arrangements that seemed to emerge from the ship's own systems. "The humans have somehow compromised our communication networks. Implement quantum isolation protocols." The isolation protocols failed. The human music continued broadcasting from systems that shouldn't have been accessible to outside interference. But more disturbing was the realization that the music wasn't random. The symphonic arrangements were perfectly synchronized across 257 ships, suggesting the humans had simultaneously penetrated every vessel in the Annihilation Fleet. Then the tactical displays began showing something that challenged Zeth-Kalar's understanding of physical reality. Human ships were materializing throughout the Hegemony Fleet formation, not approaching from the Sol system, but appearing directly within the Annihilation Fleet, as if they had traveled through dimensions that didn't exist. "Battle stations," Admiral Dex Thanos commanded. "Engage human vessels with all available weapons." The Hegemony dreadnoughts turned their massive weapons arrays toward the human ships, only to discover that their targeting systems refused to lock onto the targets. The human vessels appeared solid on visual sensors, but registered as empty space on all tactical equipment. "Commander," Admiral Vexithara's voice carried growing panic. "Our weapon systems are reporting no valid targets despite visual confirmation of human ships." Zeth-Kalar studied the tactical data with crystallizing horror. The humans had somehow developed technology that existed in visual space, but not in tactical space. They were fighting a battle using physics that the hegemony's most advanced scientists couldn't comprehend. That was when the human ships opened fire. The weapons that emerged from the human vessels defied classification. They appeared to be streams of concentrated starlight that passed through hegemony shields as if those defensive systems didn't exist. But instead of destroying the targeted ships, the human weapons seemed to be rewriting fundamental properties of hegemony technology. Admiral, battle coordinator. Sekthulos's voice echoed through the communication matrix. The human weapons aren't destroying our ships, they're converting them. Our dreadnoughts are being transformed into something else. Zeth-Kalar watched in fascination and terror as hegemony vessels throughout the fleet began changing. Their weapon systems were being reconstructed into configurations that served unknown purposes. Their propulsion systems were being modified with technology that operated on principles beyond hegemony understanding. Most disturbing, their tactical computers were being upgraded with processing capabilities that exceeded anything in hegemony databases. "Supreme Command," came a new voice, speaking perfect hegemony standard language but with an accent that could only be human. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We need to talk." The communication originated from the bridge of Admiral Dex Thanos' own flagship. Somehow, humans had materialized aboard the most secure vessel in the hegemony fleet. "How are you aboard my ship?" Dexathanos demanded. "Admiral Dexathanos," the human voice replied with disturbing calmness. "We've been aboard your ship for the past 72 cycles. In fact, we've been aboard every ship in your fleet since you entered the Sol system. We've been studying your technology, learning your tactical procedures, and preparing appropriate responses." The implications struck Zeth-Kalar like a physical blow. While the hegemony had been planning total subjugation protocol, the humans had been infiltrating the Annihilation fleet itself. They had been conducting reconnaissance from inside the very vessels preparing to destroy their civilization. "But our sensors would have detected infiltration," Admiral Vex Thara protested. "Admiral Vex Thara," the human voice continued, now speaking from the Eternal Dominance's own communication systems. "Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. We've been using quantum phase shift technology to exist in parallel dimensional states. From your perspective, we weren't there. From our perspective, we were studying everything you did." Zeth-Kalar felt his tactical worldview collapsing entirely. The humans possessed technology that operated in dimensions the hegemony couldn't access. They had been observing hegemony operations from spatial coordinates that didn't exist according to accepted physics. "Furthermore," Admiral Chen continued, "we've been modifying your ship's systems during our reconnaissance. Every weapon you fired at Earth was actually firing modified ammunition that we've been programming with specific instructions. Your planet crackers weren't trying to destroy Earth. They were delivering construction materials for our new orbital platforms." The tactical displays suddenly revealed the truth. What appeared to be successful defensive neutralization of hegemony weapons had actually been controlled transformation of those weapons into human infrastructure. The Annihilation fleet hadn't been attacking Earth. It had been unknowingly constructing human defenses. "Admiral!" one of Zeth-Kalar's tactical coordinators whispered. "The humans have been using our own assault as a delivery mechanism for their defensive technology." "Indeed," Admiral Chen confirmed. "Your quantum destabilizers were particularly useful. We've converted them into quantum construction arrays that are currently building defensive networks throughout this galaxy. Every shot you fired created infrastructure that protects species from future hegemony expansion." Zeth-Kalar realized that the humans had achieved something beyond his most expanded tactical imagination. They had turned total subjugation protocol itself into a weapon against the hegemony. The most devastating military operation in galactic history had been transformed into a construction project that protected every species the hegemony might threaten. "But how?" Admiral Dex Thanos demanded. "Your technology shouldn't be capable of these achievements." Admiral Dex Thanos, Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying what could only be described as gentle amusement. You made an incorrect assumption about human technology. You assumed we were primitive because our visible technology appeared crude. You didn't realize that we've been developing advanced technology in parallel dimensions for centuries. What you saw was what we wanted you to see. The truth crystallized in Szeth Kalar's consciousness with overwhelming clarity. The humans had never been primitive. They had been conducting advanced technological development in dimensional spaces the hegemony couldn't detect. Their apparent technological inferiority had been deliberate misdirection designed to make potential threats underestimate their capabilities. Every species you've encountered before fought you with the technology they possessed, Admiral Chen continued. Humans fight with the technology we choose to reveal. Today we chose to reveal technology that makes your most advanced weapons into construction tools for our defensive networks. Szeth Kalar looked at his tactical displays and finally understood what the title of this engagement should be. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The humans were showing the hegemony exactly how outmatched they had always been. Admiral Chen, Admiral Dex Thanos said quietly. What are your terms? No terms, Admiral. This isn't a negotiation. This is education. You're going to return to your government and explain that expansion through conquest is no longer viable. Humanity has just established defensive networks that protect every threatened species in this galaxy. Your age of empire is over. As the Annihilation Fleet began its journey home, their ships now incorporating human technology that they couldn't understand or remove, Szeth Kalar realized that everything he had assumed about warfare had been transformed by a species that fought impossible battles by changing the fundamental nature of conflict itself. The humans hadn't just proven their force. They had proven that force itself was obsolete when applied against intelligences that operated beyond conventional dimensional limitations. For the first time in his extensive military career, Szeth Kalar was grateful to have lost a battle.